Once upon a time, in an era when the fear of Allah lived in people's hearts, there was a small town near Baghdad. In this town, Tabriz Khan, a butcher, ran his shop. He had such a stern temperament that people would tremble at the sight of him. As soon as children heard his voice, they would hide in their homes. Tabriz's shop was at the very end of the market. He opened it at sunrise and worked until evening. People said he always had a frown on his face, yet his meat was always fresh and carefully cut. In the same town lived Tukral, a potter. His speech was so sweet that everyone admired him. He always stood in the first row during prayers and spoke to people about good deeds, earning their respect. Tugral's shop was in the middle of the market, where the busiest crowd gathered. He created beautiful designs on his pottery and inscribed Quranic verses, leaving people amazed. Many followed his advice, considering him a righteous man. One day, news spread that the king's minister would visit the area. Everyone began decorating their shops and cleaning their homes. Tugral prepared his most precious pottery to present as gifts to the minister. When Tabriz learned of this, he merely cleaned his shop and continued his work. People assumed he didn't care, or perhaps didn't want to meet the minister. No one dared to ask because of his stern demeanor. The night before the minister's arrival, Tabriz closed his shop and went toward the forest. No one knew where he was headed. Some said he might be meeting someone. Others speculated he was hiding treasure. Meanwhile, Tugral stayed up all night polishing his pottery, setting aside the finest pieces for the minister, and decorating his home to make a good impression. He also advised others on how to welcome the minister. The next morning, the town was bustling with activity. Streets were cleaned, shops decorated, and children came out in colorful clothes. Tugral stood at the front with his gifts, eagerly awaiting the minister. But Tabriz's shop remained closed, leading people to believe he had already disappeared. Some thought he might be shy because of his bad temper, but no one knew the real reason. At noon, the minister's caravan entered the town. A magnificent chariot drawn by 6 horses. The minister, Jamizal Ahmed, was an elderly and wise man with a white beard and a face full of wisdom. The townspeople showered him with flowers. Tugral stood at the front, smiling artificially and holding his pottery. The minister smiled and thanked everyone, then moved toward the banquet hall. Upon reaching, he asked, "What is this place famous for?" The town's leader replied, "Our town is known for Tugral the potter's vessels and Tabriz Khan's meat." The minister expressed interest, saying he wanted to meet both. Tugral immediately presented his pottery, explaining that each piece bore Quranic verses, bringing blessings to the food served in them. The minister was impressed. Then he asked about Tabriz Khan. The leader explained he was a strange man and might have gone somewhere. Upon hearing of the visit, Tugral smiled and said, "Tabriz always did this. He got nervous around people." At that moment, someone rushed in saying Tabriz had returned to his shop. The minister's eyes lit up and he said, "Let's meet him first. We will visit Tugral afterward." When the minister reached Tabriz's shop, he found him quietly engrossed in work. Seeing the minister, Tabriz simply lowered his head to greet and continued his work. The minister watched him for a while. Then he asked, "Where were you yesterday?" Without looking up, Tabriz replied, "Sir, I went to the forest to distribute meat to the poor, as I do every month." The minister was astonished, as no one knew about this. He asked if he ever told anyone, and Tabriz humbly said, "No, sir. Allah sees, and that is enough. I do it for His pleasure, not for fame." The minister was deeply impressed. He purchased some meat from Tabriz and returned to the banquet. Later that evening, they visited Tugral's shop. Tugral was impatient, proudly showing off his preparations. He had decorated his home lavishly, laid expensive carpets, and set a variety of dishes. He kept praising himself, claiming he prayed 5 times daily and helped the poor. The minister listened silently, but his eyes revealed his judgment. During the dinner, an old woman arrived, pleading for utensils for her son's wedding, promising to pay later. Tugral, embarrassed, rudely said, "Bring the money first, then take the utensils." The minister quietly observed, noting Tugral's pride. Tugral continued showing off his charity. But it was for recognition, not sincerity. The next morning, the minister visited Tabriz's shop again and saw him giving free meat to a poor man. When asked why, Tabriz explained that whoever comes in need receives meat freely. It's his daily practice. The minister asked if anyone knew about it. Tabriz humbly said, "What is done for Allah should be done secretly. There's no need to boast. Allah sees, and that is enough." Respect shone in the minister's eyes. At that moment, a troubled man arrived, asking for meat broth for his sick wife. Lacking money, Tabriz immediately gave the best meat and prayed for her recovery. The minister asked, "Do you trust everyone blindly, even if some might lie?" Tabriz smiled. "If they lie, Allah will hold them accountable. If they are truthful, I earn reward." On the 4th day, the minister announced his departure, but gathered the townspeople, especially Tugral, who eagerly expected special recognition. The minister, with a mysterious smile, addressed them. "I have spent 3 days here and observed 2 types of people, one who shows off their goodness and one who performs it secretly, one whose speech is sweet but heart deceitful, and one whose demeanor is stern but heart merciful." Tugral's face paled, realizing nothing could hide from the minister's gaze. Tabriz stood quietly, neither happy nor troubled. The minister revealed he was seeking someone worthy to be appointed as the Qazi of the kingdom. Everyone was astonished, especially Tugral, who believed the position was his. The minister continued, "A Qazi is one who is righteous in both outward and inward actions, who works for Allah's pleasure, not for fame." He declared that the person they had found was Tabriz Khan, the butcher. Everyone was stunned. Tugral was speechless, and Tabriz was surprised. The minister explained that he had observed Tabriz for 3 days and saw that his deeds were solely for Allah. His outward demeanor was stern, yet his heart was soft and merciful. This is the true quality of a Qazi. Tugral, humbled, realized his arrogance and envy had been his downfall. Tabriz politely said he was a simple butcher and lacked formal knowledge of being a Qazi. The minister smiled. "Whoever fears Allah in their heart is the greatest scholar." The next day, Tabriz's shop was crowded. People who had ignored him earlier came to meet him. Tugral's shop, on the other hand, was quiet. People no longer admired his sweet words, and envy burned in his heart. He reflected on years of outward worship that had gained him nothing. The minister instructed Tabriz to prepare to go to the capital within 3 days. Tabriz hesitated, saying he had never left the village and only knew his butcher work. The minister reassured him, Allah will be your helper. That night, Tughril, consumed by jealousy, plotted to harm Tabriz to claim the position. He sneaked into Tabriz's shop, trying to plant something to frame him. Tabriz noticed and confronted him, capturing him and intending to take him to the minister. Tughril fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness. Tabriz, instead of anger, felt mercy. He forgave Tughril and said he deserved a second chance. The next morning, Tabriz went to the minister, explaining the incident and recommending Tughril be given a chance to reform. The minister smiled, saying that forgiving was the greatest act of virtue, and thus Tabriz proved he was truly deserving of the Qazi position. Tughril's eyes welled up, realizing his mistakes. 3 days later, Tabriz left for the capital, honored by the townspeople. Tughril, humbly asking for forgiveness, was embraced by Tabriz, who had long since forgiven him. Tughril resolved to do good sincerely for Allah, no longer for show. Upon reaching the capital, Tabriz marveled at the grandeur, learning the principles of justice as the Qazi. Meanwhile, Tughril quietly helped the poor and sat at the back in the mosque. A year later, Tabriz became known for his fair judgments. The king appointed him head of the court, praising him for acting solely for Allah's pleasure. Years later, Tughril wrote to Tabriz about building a home for orphans. Tabriz sent half his salary to help. Tughril's life had truly changed. He realized the true meaning of Allah's fear through Tabriz's forgiveness. Tabriz smiled, saying it was Allah's mercy. When they grew old, people recounted their story, a butcher and a potter, one who acted for Allah silently, and one who had learned to abandon the show. The tale teaches that true piety is acting for Allah's pleasure, not for fame. Outwardly stern, but inwardly soft, like Tabriz, is valued over outwardly sweet, but inwardly deceitful, like Tughril used to be. Allah sees the hearts, not the show. The greatest lesson of this story is pure intention. Tabriz's deeds were always for Allah, never to boast. Without pure intention, all goodness is futile. The fear of Allah is true strength, guiding humans to righteousness in every situation. By forgiving Tughril, Tabriz proved that forgiveness is a great virtue, giving others a chance to reform. Tughril's life changed because of this forgiveness. Pride and hypocrisy destroy, but sincere repentance is always accepted by Allah. Patience and steadfastness on the path of goodness bring true service to humanity. True success lies not in positions or fame, but in Allah's pleasure.